save her child. However, the patriarch does not seem to be bothered as he sips away on his tea. Being persistent as she is, Sylvia exclaims that the patriarch is well aware of the child's state and how much the child means to her. She repeatedly asks him to save him. But adding to the bleak and tense atmosphere, the patriarch coldly questions why he would want to save someone who cannot contribute to the family. He expresses that the child is an example of how difficult a martial artist's life is. Sylvia continues to persuade the patriarch as she mentions the child to be his grandson. But he is not fazed. The most he can do for the child is to give him the Zygarde name, and he asks his daughter to be thankful that he is being generous even with such an offering. Of course, Sylvia's tears do not appear to stop as she wails and screams for her father. The cruel man then asks the guards to take her away, and the brutish men drag her out of the room. Sylvia's screams and wails can be well heard across the mansion, as she desperately shouts at her father to save her child. The cries do not go unnoticed because the saint observes this commotion. He sighs in disappointment and calls the patriarch stubborn. This is when, in a shocking turn of events, the saint questions what the patriarch plans to do now when he has called him to look upon his grandson's condition. The patriarch overlooks the confrontation and quietly sips on his tea, asking the saint to give the details. He continues to do so, saying that as Leon grows, the condition worsens with his age. But he emphasizes that thanks to the patriarch's aura pushing out some of the cold air, he will be fine for a bit. However, the unforeseen situation dawns upon the patriarch as it is made known that his grandson will not be able to become a martial artist. Following the patriarch's strange dilemma and behavior, the saint asks why he has named the child Shadow, expressing that there are many names that he could have chosen from. Interestingly, the patriarch mentions that the name, Leon, does not just mean shadow. He continues to enlighten the saint, as he mentions that 1,000 years ago, it had another meaning too. At the break of dawn, as the sun shines down, we are brought into the setting of the mansion as Sylvia holds down a spoon with some medicine. She encourages Leon to gulp down the medicine provided by the saint. Anticipating a speedy recovery, the maid and Sylvia both close their eyes, wishing the baby to be healed. They open their eyes at the sound of the baby squealing and reaching out his hand for his mother. Sylvia celebrates in joy along with the maid, Helen, happy that her son is healing and enduring. Helen agrees with the lady as she also adds that he must have understood their intentions. Holding her son firmly in her arms, Sylvia draws Leon closer as he contemplates feeling better. He notices the medicine to be the fire attribute medicine, which is creating warm air to push out the cold air from his mana circuits. Satisfied with the results of the medicine, Sylvia encourages and playfully asks if her son understands her intentions. Our baby hero nervously and hesitantly accepts taking in more medicine. Fast forwarding a couple of years, we are brought to a setting where our baby hero has grown. He narrates to fill in the gaps for us. Leon says that he started training after taking the medicine, and after achieving a groundbreaking first fire ring. 2 more years of training have passed. All grown up, our baby hero is not so baby anymore, and he expresses the same emotion as he continues to narrate his daily routine from the last 2 years. After playing with Sylvia and Helen around nap time and midnight, he would always train. Even more time has passed since the start of his training, and now our hero is 5 years old. We see a grown-up Leon sitting upright on his bed as he smiles in satisfaction, and a system window appears in front of him showing his achievements at such a young age. The window highlights that he has now finally achieved the 2nd ring of fire. By this time, it is revealed that Leon has managed to create the 2-star ring of fire. Leon observes and gazes upon the message window as he contemplates the factors of the 2-star ring of fire. He elaborates that at this stage, the flames revolve in cross formation, and his energy observation gets more sensitive. The deep contemplation and celebration are, however, interrupted by Helen, who calls for Leon, expressing that he is up early this morning. She asks if she can take his laundry, and Leon approves. He observes Helen work her way through his laundry, as he realizes that she cannot see the message window appearing before him. And now we learn, as Leon tells us, that the message windows first started appearing when he obtained the 1-star fire ring. In a flashback, our hero narrates that he did not know what it was at first, but he soon realized it to be a comfortable status window that lets him check all his stats. He also mentions Helen's strange reaction when he first started interacting with the window. He expresses that it was evident that the message was only available to him. Continuing the deep contemplation, Leon expresses that although he has now achieved the 2 stars, his low stamina and the bitter cold curse remain. He strokes his chin and points out that improving like this would not have been possible if not for the fire attribute medicine. Dwelling back on past events, he expresses that during these 5 years, Helen and Sylvia, along with everyone at the annex, have been looking after him diligently, taking care of him like a prince. Rubbing the back of his head, he believes all this prince's treatment must have had an influence on him as well. But it soon dawns upon him that he still has a lot of time left, and he is only yet 5 years old. He then contemplates his condition, elaborating that the curse is a problem, and so is the low stamina, which work together to get in his way if he tries to move even a little bit. However, in his past life, he was known as the best assassin on the continent, and he had learned the greatest technique of the Ring of Fire. Our hero draws a ball of fire that revolves and hovers in his hands. He plans that once he completes the Ring of Fire, using his past experiences, the weaknesses will soon be gone forever. He adds that upon learning the Zygarde's swordsmanship, he will be able to slay Dareth's neck. But as Dareth is one of the strongest transcendents on the continent, Leon knows that he won't be able to keep his mind stable if he goes insane from revenge. He concludes that even if it's slow, he needs to gain the power and finish him off when the opportunity arises. Just as our hero determines to train even harder, a voice calls at him, acknowledging that he is awake. He turns his attention towards the voice and finds his mother, reminding him that they have to go somewhere today, and asking him to get changed so they can leave. Leon looks out the window and elaborates that the powers that maintain the balance of the continent are called the 5 demons and 6 emperors. As a cart travels across the stone road, our hero continues to explain that of those powers, he has been born into the Zygarde family, which belongs to the 6 emperors. He adds that the emperors demonstrate a positive influence, while the demons threaten the peace of the continent. He also explains that there are several other powers outside of these, and so there happens to be a judgment ceremony to determine if these powers are good or bad. The cart follows into the gates of an annex, as Leon expresses that today is the Zygarde family's judgment ceremony. The gossiping mouths of the families that have already arrived at the ceremony echo throughout the hall as they chat and engage in meaningless conversation. The gossiping continues as they call out to other families and their sons. Just when there is talk about Sylvia and her son, it is seen that Sylvia walks into the hall with Leon holding her hand. The chatter in the hall rises as they call Sylvia an outcast. The cold faces of the families in the hall glare upon Sylvia as she walks in and observes the cutting eyes of the families that stand before her. As Leon walks along with his mother into the hall, the chatter continues, and they point out at Leon, gossiping about his height and the rumors of him being sick being true. There is refusal and denial in the words that cut through Sylvia's skin. She hears people questioning why the outcast's son is participating in the judgment ceremony. The people express their hatred as they exclaim that they did not want to see the two, for it drops the ceremony's standards. Leon notices the harsh words of the families from the direct line. He questions if there are some kinds of circumstances behind the words, but he immediately gets a hold of himself. He expresses that he does not care if they are talking ill of him. However, he is startled to hear the words of people calling his mother, Sylvia, shameless. Hardening his facial expressions, Leon expresses anger and is infuriated at the harsh words being thrown at his mother. He quickly snaps back into reality when Sylvia calls for him. She tells him that it's okay and asks him to just look at his mom. Our hero bravely accepts and moves forward with his mother, and just then, a voice yells out to make it known that the patriarch is entering. He contemplates the long time since he has seen his grandfather, as our hero gazes upon the shiny attire that the patriarch holds as he walks up to his throne. The powerful presence of the patriarch is known as he sits on the throne and the announcer yells out his name. Glenn acknowledges that everyone has arrived at the ceremony, and Leon glares upon what is to happen next. The patriarch's hand swishes, and a giant sword appears before the people in the hall. Leon is taken aback in nervousness as he questions if it is the sword of judgment. And then, the heavy voice of the patriarch calls out for the judgment ceremony to begin. Glenn Zygarde has made the judgment sword appear in front of the audience for the judgment ceremony, which our hero explains that upon placing one's hand on the stone sword, the sword determines the mana ability that they possess. Glenn glances upon the audience when the announcer calls for the name of Burn Zygarde to begin the ceremony. Burn sits up enthusiastically at his call to be acknowledged. Leon observes Burn approach the stone sword, and he explains that from the age of 4, the skull of the child begins to close up, and from then on, the child's mana ability remains stagnant. Loud and shining energy flares up around the hall atmosphere as Burn holds his hand upon the stone sword. Leon adds that this place is where the judgment ceremony takes place to determine the kid's mana ability. Green energy illuminates the hall, and applause follows as the audience discusses and judges the light that is being emitted. They conclude it to be the wind ability of great quality and applaud the boy. The patriarch also commends the great ability, commenting it to be an attribute well suited for a swordsman and encouraging the child to channel the wind forth. Next up, a boy from the vassal family of Runan is announced to come forward, and he sits up to acknowledge his call. Observing and judging the different patterns and interactions, Leon concludes and explains that how far the light travels indicates the mana's purity, while the mana's attribute is determined by the sword's tip. He elaborates that this is how the Zygarde family determines their talent. He also observes the cheering and enthusiasm among the families as they applaud Runan for his ability, commending his family name and comparing him with Burn. Leon notices that these people value their talent just as much as they value their life. And so, he guesses that he won't be able to display good results. Although the Ring of Fire is on the 2-star levels, his mana circuits still have a lot of cold on them. But truth be told, such things don't really matter to our boy. Just in time, the announcer lastly calls for our hero, and he feels the intense glares and sights of disgust that the families portray at him. The patriarch joins this sentiment, and Leon is called forward. Sylvia smiles and calls for her son to proceed, and Leon obeys. He knows that he does not anticipate extraordinary results, he just needs to find a mana attribute that best suits this body. Sylvia guides Leon as she tells him to do the same as the other kids, and Leon listens. He steps forward and sighs nervously, before placing his palm on the stone sword. Surprisingly, a loud golden light is emitted through the stone sword, and our hero's eyes widen at this sight. He wonders what this light represents. The light blinds his vision, and he instead sees a sight of a man standing in front of him with demonic creatures observing from the side. He questions what all of this means. Demonic creatures glare viciously over the man standing in front of them, and Leon sits behind for cover as he witnesses this strange phenomenon. He wonders who the man is that stands in front of him, and before he could muster another thought, the man holds up a shiny sword that glows brightly, illuminates the sky. The man swings the sword with full force as he grips the handle firmly, and the sword strikes through the demonic creatures that approach him while wailing in agony. A loud blast follows right after, and Leon snaps back into reality to acknowledge the task at hand, the stone sword. Just as he glances over at the sword, he is taken aback to find out that the light that emitted has not even made it to the halfway mark. Laughter and hysteria follow right after as the families taunt Leon for his light reaching such a low point, not to mention that it doesn't even have a color. The patriarch remains silent, observing the unfortunate outcome of his grandson's ability. Sylvia approaches Leon to comfort her son, and reassure him that he has done his best. But the harsh words of the families cut like blades as they walk through the shame. They question if Leon is truly a descendant of the Zygarde family and taunt him, suggesting that he might have only inherited the red eyes and blonde hair. The patriarch observes the humiliating commotion and calls out for the laughter and hysteria to stop. Naturally, the people immediately quiet down in fear of the patriarch's heavy voice. He calls off the ceremony and asks the families to return. One by one, all the families leave with their capable children, feeling proud. And shortly after, everyone leaves as the door is closed shut behind them. Glenn sits on his throne in disappointment beside the stone sword, towering high in the hall. He calls for his warrant, mentioning that it can't be helped for his grandson. He dwells in regret over the incident, when suddenly, the golden light shines and illuminates the hall once again. His eyes widen at the unforeseen sight. The golden light flares and blazes through the hall, forcing the patriarch out of his throne to acknowledge the might of the light emitted from the stone sword. He recognizes this golden light. It's the signature aura of the Zygarde family's first patriarch, which displayed transcendental fire power that could melt even the flames of the demonic realm. Gazing upon the book to find enlightenment, Glenn, the patriarch, elaborates on the golden mana and golden flames, mentioning it to be a one-time occurrence throughout the history of the Zygarde. He reads of the mana of dense golden light, which is blindingly beautiful and radiantly shiny. This is when the realization dawns upon him, and he notices the golden flame-like light emitting from the stone sword to be the golden flame aura. His eyes widen at the shocking sight. At this point, all he could do was stand there in a daze, nothing more and nothing less. Abruptly switching settings, we see our hero grow twofold since the last time we saw him, once again gazing upon the message window to take a glance at his stats. He reaches out his finger at the screen, wondering if it is time for him to reach the 3-star Ring of Fire already. Narrating over the scene, he tells us that 7 years have already passed since the judgment ceremony, and he has now turned 12 years old. He explains that with consistent training, he is now at the doorstep of reaching the 3 fire rings. His tolerance for water attributes has also risen to being 2 stars, so the coldness in his body has disappeared, improving since it first started, but still rendering our hero unable to move. Moving forward in the present, Leon plans to begin training soon, when suddenly, Sylvia's voice calls at him, and she approaches him to ask why he is not ready for the occasion yet. She asks him to leave quickly before they get late. Leon obediently agrees with his mom and contemplates the fact that the second judgment ceremony has come to face him once again. He annoyingly exclaims that he will have to see those bastards from the direct line of families. The concept of time in this universe really is twisted, because we are once again brought back to the judgment ceremony hall. The voice of the announcer commends the last family competitor and calls for the judgment ceremony's end. Leon wonders if it is because it's the judgment ceremony of the indirect bloodlines today that the ceremony has ended earlier than expected. This is also when the patriarch calls for his name. And acknowledging the patriarch, Leon addresses his call. Glenn confronts Leon for not responding to the basic training orders that he has been receiving for the last month, but our hero is confused and dazed at the sudden confrontation. He does not know what the patriarch is talking about. Just then, Sylvia walks in to address the concern, pleading that Leon still has a lot of cold energy left in his body for him to endure training. She exclaims that he is different from other children. Leon, on the other hand, is taken aback at the fact that his mother knew of this, but not him. Despite Sylvia's desperate attempts, the patriarch coldly denies to entertain any such thoughts, emphasizing that this is the Zygarde's land, and there are no exceptions for the one named in the Zygarde family. He expresses that if one cannot walk, they must crawl in order to train. Sylvia continues her desperate attempt, and her voice shatters down as she pleads the patriarch for a bit more time. But once again, the patriarch does not like to play around. He confronts and questions her if she will leave the family once again with the child. She is startled and forced to stand in a daze as the patriarch enforces that this is the Zygarde land, and she must live according to their ways. He warns her that if she does not wish to comply, she is free to leave right this moment. Falling into deep despair and regret, she recalls all of her past mistakes. All the while, she hears the harsh words of the people, taunting her and calling her names, claiming that she will run away again. But this time, she won't have any more energy cores to destroy. The words cut through her skin, and she is shattered when the people shame her for being from the direct bloodline. Observing his mother's expressions, Leon understands why she gets treated so harshly. It is because she had abandoned the family once before. He explains that Sylvia has had traces of learning martial arts, but no mana energy. He tells us that after breaking her own mana circuits and energy core, she had left to marry his father, who had died while she was still pregnant, leaving her no choice but to return to her family. Leon understands that a member of the direct lineage that had left on her own and came back crawling would be treated poorly. However, he steps up in front of the patriarch, making his emotions of anger clear. Now, he is her son, and he cannot watch her mother get treated so harshly. Looks like a confrontation is imminent, but will our hero's grandfather actually show him mercy for standing up to his mother? Or will he simply get mad and punish him for his act of